to the CX Roundtable. I'm Sarah Caminiti. Today is a really exciting CX Roundtable that I'm kind of still in shock that's actually happening. I am talking to the people that build the tools that we use every single day. And we're going to learn about what they think about support, what they think about the tools, what they think about AI, what they think about the future, lots of different things. But I'm really, really excited to have this opportunity. And I will let them introduce themselves. We'll start with Scott. Scott's joining us from Help Scout. I just stole your introduction, but I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm the VP of product at Help Scout. Help Scout's a 14-year-old business. We're located all over the world. And I actually came to Help Scout because I used to use Help Scout when I was a startup founder a couple times. And so when Nick, our co-founder and CEO, emailed me and said, "Hey, are you interested in this product role?" I was like, I love Help Scout. And that's kind of one of the prerequisites for me when I join a team is I have to love the product. So yeah, I'm happy to be here. Excited about the conversation.
Awesome. Wow. What a cool story. And I will probably bug you about that later.
Yeah.
That's really neat. Kevin, I would love for you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Kevin Yang. I'm the head of AI here at Front. Front is a help desk that largely has 9,000 plus users that focus on high value interactions and complex workflows. I joined Front through acquisition. They bought my startup. I was a multi-time founder before that. I actually got my start in 2010 when I started my first business. It was a food delivery business, and I did customer service during the day. And then I was our software engineer at night. And so actually building for folks delivering service is something that I resonate with, given that I was getting personal calls to my personal cell phone for 4 years for that business. So
Cool. Wow. What an awesome experience to be able to come into Front and bring that that take with you. I'm loving these intros. These are awesome. All right, Rachel, I would love for you to introduce yourself.
Thanks for having me, Sarah. I'm Rachel Hughes. I'm VP of Product at Kustomer. Kustomer is a CX tool. I really think of us as almost like an operating system for CX. So really bringing data automations, user experience together to help make CX really proactive. I've had a very kind of interesting career, been a product leader at a number of places, focusing retail, e-commerce, health tech. Prior to that, I actually was a lawyer for 10 years. That's probably a story for another day, but really excited to be here and to talk about CX.
It's gracious. This is like the benefit of me not knowing anybody when you're coming into these calls. I'm just blown away by how cool everybody is. And I wish I could just have like 6 hours to pick your brain about a bunch of different things, but I will stay on track. I promise, or at least I'll try. So I'm going to start with the first question. And I think that this one is going to be one that everybody in support is really curious about, because as the three of you know firsthand, because you're building for us, support is not a job that everybody can do well. Support is a very complex job. It requires so many different skills, and all of those skills need to be used at the exact same time in ways that other career choices would probably give you a pause in between a lot of those skills. And it's always stressful, and there's always these pressures and these expectations, and it's a lot. It's a lot. And so thinking of how support work, and how especially support work for startups and SaaS companies, how it's evolved over the last 10 to 15 years. And now we've got these veterans that just crush it when it comes to the nuance. They know how to navigate that emotional labor. They know how important context is when they're communicating well with customers. How, Scott, do you design for that kind of complexity?
Well, and there's a lot of options. Like, we have three products represented here that are all great. And so, when I think about this, I think that it's been an evolution of maybe software that helps people, like in the most crude way, like work a queue of tickets, to evolving to, how do we build software that helps drive metrics that matter for businesses. And I think there's a lot of wrapped up as well in efficiency metrics and AI and satisfaction. But at the end of the day, we kind of are thinking about what's going to drive business outcomes. It's like support teams are often seen as cost centers, and we're trying to build software that helps them being seen as kind of a strategic function. So MPS, reducing churn. How does the support team actually drive revenue? There's stories we can tell there with software.
That's a big task that you need to undertake over in the help desk department for sure. But I mean, I couldn't agree more. It's we're in this cool opportunity right now where you have these veterans who have been doing this for so long. They understand what good looks like. They understand that right now this really is the differentiator in many, many companies. There's so many things that are doing similar different things for others, and we know this, especially as consumers. One bad support interaction, you start thinking, do I need to stay here? Do I need to start poking around and seeing what else is out there? And so having the tools be able to help us tell the power that exists within support to the other departments is incredibly important, because doing it manually, I mean, it's possible, but it is very time consuming. And we have a lot of tickets in the queue usually that we need to get to. Kevin, I would love your take on this. How do you design for the complexity of support?
Yeah. So one thing is we work really closely with the support team at Front, and one observation I've had is that the support veterans are increasingly transitioning out of frontline support, either tier 1, tier 2, into support operations roles. And as we think about building software, we actually frequently think about these folks, right? How do we build software so that we can take the knowledge that they have and kind of scale it? And so that it's so rare when you find these support veterans that like understand every aspect of the product and understand how everything works and how to troubleshoot everything. And you recognize that it is unreasonable to basically believe that you're going to get a team of 50 of these people, right, to all replicate this. So the question is, how do you make it so that more of the customers end up with the experience of interacting with one of these superstars, and yeah, how do you build the tools to do that? And of course, like I work on AI, so we focus a lot on that. But the reality is that we think that AI is only able to handle the kind of high the questions or the requests where the answer is well understood, like realistically in near term, right? And so in many ways, it's like, okay, how do we make it so that we build the tools to execute those situations, handle those situations super well, let the veterans kind of craft that experience so that it happens the way they want to. And then in the situations where it really requires empathy and escalation, then free up the time so that those folks have the time to give customers the care that they need. Right. So that's that's kind of how we're thinking about the problem.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like building those partnerships with your support team, Kevin. I know, especially you are so lucky because you have Kenji, and you're able to lean into him and his expertise. I mean, all three of you have such incredible leaders at your company working on the support teams, that you just have this gold mine of people that will be able to help guide you. And so it's always lovely to hear that you're listening and you're building for them just as much as you're building for the rest of the community, because they are a perfect example of how these systems work and how they help, how they handicap you sometimes. And you need to listen. And I love that you do. What about you, Rachel, over at Kustomer? How do you handle
Yeah.
all of these complexities?
I mean, I think the first thing that's super important as a product leader, regardless of where you are, is to have a little humility in terms of understanding that, your customers just understand their needs so much better, and they're so much more complex to what you said than you can even imagine. I spent a lot of time on the road with customers, and every single customer I speak to, I'm just constantly amazed by just what they're orchestrating just every day. So, when we think about building product at Customer, we really take that platform approach to think about how do we create a tool that is configurable, that allows our customers to use this in the workflows that make sense for them. And I think another piece that's really important, especially with AI, we're making such great strides with using AI to, to automate, to provide support to our reps, to our leaders, to the community as well. But when I think about that question around the empathy, it's really, how can we ensure that our AI is helping to really provide support, and to not, you don't want our reps to feel like when they're using the AI in concert with your tool, that the customers don't know if they're talking to AI or not, right? So just like giving them tools that help make them better, rather than, feeling like they're, in competition in a lot of ways with, in those use cases where it absolutely requires the empathy and that personal interaction, rather than kind of that more automated, seamless sort of, AI interaction that, may not require humans.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's so true. It's so true. You have to be thinking about how are the people on the other end going to be taking in this information? And then you guys have to take it one step further, because you have to be thinking about how is the customer of the customer going to be taking in this information, which is a lot of layers. And there are some help desks out there that, we've all tried in the past, that they kind of skip that middle step, or they skip the last step and they're kind of left to pick up the pieces without any of the tools that they need to do that. And then they start to wonder, like, is this a me thing? Like, am I missing something here? But it's really the tools are not allowing them to be successful. And Rachel and Kevin, you touched on this, and as did you, Scott, a little bit, but I'd love to know more. I'll start right back with you, Rachel. I'm really curious if anything with working with AI specifically, has that changed the way that you approach customer experience and cultivating these customer experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. It's changed everything about my day to day, my work. With the team. I think we're all just in the middle of this incredible transformation. I think there's just so much education we're doing with our customers, and really helping them learn how, to calibrate to their level of maturity with AI, and understand what these tools can do, and where they can use them best. So I think that's been really interesting to help calibrate and say, based on where you are with your own maturity with your data, and what you're looking to do, like, here's where you should be focusing with AI versus a one size fits all solution. So just being able to continue to work with customers and sort of tune our understanding of what's the right approach for what customer at what time has been really interesting.
I bet. I bet. What about you, Kevin? I mean, you're thinking about this stuff, especially all the time. How has it impacted your work when you're thinking about the customer experience?
Yeah. So I, having worked like frontline customer service for years, one of the things that I realized sometimes was like, it was taking me more time and basically money for my company to solve this customer problem than the customer is actually worth at the time. Right now, being focused on the end customer experience, right, because it's my business at the time, of course I was going to solve it. But like in the back of my mind, I'm like, this is just a negative ROI interaction. I think one of the nice things about, or one of the potentials of AI is to drive the cost of solving issues down enough so that businesses don't have to make this choice about like engaging with customers in a negative ROI manner and actually delivering quality of service that's inexpensive enough so you can actually afford to solve the problem. And so like I think this is a dynamic that like is frequently unsaid, right? Because it's like kind of binary. Do you care about your customers or do you not? But frequently like you want to care about the customers, but you also have to do it in a way that like just makes sense for the business, right? And so I think that's one of the things I hope that happens as we, really we roll out AI across the industry. And I actually think the amount of support that will happen will increase a dramatic amount because the friction involved, right, in actually getting help should go down. You will spend less time on wait, or hopefully no time waiting, and etc. So that's one of the things that we're paying a lot of attention to about whether the underlying like dynamics of what when the end customer gets support changes.
Yeah, I love that. I love that comment about how once we kind of navigate how we're going to get this to the sweet spot of bringing AI into the customer experience, that the customer at the end of the day is probably going to receive more support because it's just going to be a different kind of support, or it will be an elevated level of support because the folks that they're talking to are talking to them without any pressure to hit, a really quick turnaround time or get to the next ticket in the queue. And they're going to be able to actually pause and ask those follow-up questions and talk about something cool that's happening with the product next, or, pick their brain about something they complained about a few months ago, see if it's still top of mind or if it kind of worked itself out. You can actually get to know your customers when you are afforded that luxury of time, which is really what it is at the end of the day. And Scott, talk about time and volume. Help Scout is doing some really exciting things with changing how you're approaching setting up packages for companies.
In terms of AI at Help Scout, we took an early stance a couple years ago in saying, a lot of the other companies are saying like we're pivoting and our whole identity is going to be about AI and CX. And we took an early stance saying like, no, we think AI is a tool. It's a really great thing. It's going to transform things, but at the end of the day, it's still about customers, your customers, our customers who are using Help Scout, and that the human to human interaction. I don't think that philosophy or claim is controversial. Like I'm sure Rachel, Kevin, and I will be like, of course, these are humans helping humans. But one thing we talk about now that we've like played with the technology and we've rolled out some products, and I think all of us probably have some kind of AI agent, or we call it AI answers at Help Scout. One thing we've learned is like that for our customer's customer, the people interacting with these tools, it's often more delightful to get a quick answer from AI. Not always, but often. And so we internally we have all these principles around, what would be, we literally use the word delight. What's going to drive the most delight? And if the answer is, oh, it won't be delightful to interact with AI about this thing, then we kind of steer people away from that, or we don't invest in that. If it's like, hey, I've got a quick question and my AI has the knowledge to answer it, like why not? Like that's actually more delightful than waiting minutes, hours, days for a human to respond. So that's part of why Help Scout includes AI in all of our packages. We're able to do that because we charge based on the number of contacts or people you help. But that kind of frees people to not worry about whether they use AI or not and what's the cost going to be. It's just kind of built in.
I think that's so smart. And what you were saying, Scott, about like whether or not this is actually going to be beneficial interaction with the customer, I think is one of those things that you don't really hear companies acknowledge the importance of paying attention to. You hear about these companies that are, I mean, Atlassian just cut half of their support team because they're pushing AI bots? Didn't they learn from what happened with Klarna? And we're still in these situations where it's like people think that this is going to be the secret sauce to saving all of this money. And you're forgetting that these folks in the front lines have been the face of your company forever. They are the reason why so many people stay with your company, because when you do have to interact with support, you, just like you said, you have to wait for an answer. So you're putting yourself in a vulnerable situation. Asking for help is always vulnerable, but then waiting, not knowing if it's going to get you what you need. And then you do get what you need, and you're left feeling proud and capable to do whatever it was that you were unable to do, but also safe to come back and ask more questions, and making sure that that is not lost, even when you're incorporating AI, is what's going to make or break a lot of businesses in the next 5 to 10 years. And with the idea of when does it make sense to include AI, I'm someone in a lot of the places where I've found myself leading teams, it doesn't make sense for AI to actually communicate via a bot with a customer. Like, it could make more sense for it to be part of the knowledge base and really help drive traffic to the knowledge base. But it is a very clear delineation of, like, this is not a bot named Susan that's going to tell you everything. But in e-commerce, it does make a lot of sense to have AI helping you out in certain situations. Like, if I'm looking for a refund, I do not want to wait 2 days for someone to say, yes, congratulations, you now have been granted this refund. It takes 2 seconds. Just have it scan my system and tell me that I got the refund, and then we move on. We don't need to have a back and forth. And that's something that AI is not only giving that delight to the customer, because now they feel heard, because their time is valuable, their thoughts are valuable. No one's going to be guilting them into not doing a refund or something like that. It's just, no, we trust you. You say that you want a refund, we're going to give you a refund. If you want to talk to us about it, awesome. Here's the button to talk to us about it. But otherwise, I'm sorry that this wasn't what you wanted, and this is what you need to do. And it's celebratory in a sense that we're trusting the customers, we're believing the customers for certain situations. I'm always curious too that, like, within support that you are thinking about all the time, support teams struggle to be heard, especially with product, and especially in this time of AI when we need specific tools to be successful. We want to experiment with certain tools to be successful, but we also learn a lot about the customer when we're using these different tools, because we're able to unlock things that we weren't able to unlock before. What are things that your product is doing to help these CX leaders have the voice to share the data that they deserve to have? Kevin, because you're thinking about AI all the time, and I mean, I'm a little obsessed with root cause analysis when it comes to tickets and drilling down what is that one thing that's actually preventing the people from being successful. Like, what is it that front is really, really thinking about from the product's perspective?
So it's funny you asked this, because as an aside, the company that Front bought is called Idiomatic. We spent 9 years basically labeling customer conversations with the root cause, right? So that's all I did for 9 years with AI. And the reason I was so obsessed with this is that at my first business, the food delivery business, the sorry, this is going to be a side. There was a perfect
Love it.
correlation between the food scores and every business metric we cared about, because food is so competitive, and all I needed to know was what did I have to do to make the food scores go up. But we were getting a million pieces of feedback a year, and back then, I mean, it was like 2015. I just couldn't. I just hired interns to read them and email out to the whole company. But like, I didn't know, even though people were telling us, I just didn't know what we needed to do. And so that was kind of the dream. So anyway, fast forward to today. The actually last month we released something called Topics, which is at the end of the day is just the automated version of you asking your agents to label every ticket that comes in with what the root cause was, right? And so the way we do this is you take all the different conversations that come in, you kind of cluster them so that you find the ones that are similar to each other, and then you use AI to name them. And then that gives you basically a list of topics that are specific to your specific business. And then you just, when the conversation comes in, you find the topic that applies and you label them. Now, I think this is useful for two things. The first thing is that, okay, of course, you can use topics to automatically triage to the right agents or teams. But I think what's more interesting to me from that story of why I spent almost a decade on this is that the customer service becomes the voice of customer, right? Becomes really the strategic voice of this is what you have to improve to make your business fundamentally better. And like the amount of richness inside customer service interactions, because this is where customers are trying to like buy or use or troubleshoot like your product or service. This is so much more valuable than what you can get from surveying people, right? And so my view is that over time, the corpus of all customer service interactions will come to replace surveys because you've actually already had these conversations, right? If you could only like, you know, my poor interns back in my food delivery days, if you could only like retrieve all this insight on demand in a reliable, you know, quantitative format, then it could actually inform the decisions that you want to make as a business, right? And so we hope to turn customer support teams into that like voice of customer function at all of our customers, and you know, engage not just saying, hey, here's an example, right, which is what's happening today. Like, here's an example of escalation, but also say, and here are the 120 other ones this past week, right? And it's gone up 50% week over week. So, and you can read all of them if you want, but here's one that where, you know, they're particularly upset. And like that, I think will be very compelling to motivate product teams or operations teams or marketing teams to make changes.
Oh my gosh, that makes my heart so happy to hear you say all of those things. I used to manually do root cause analysis on every single ticket that came into my queue for 5 years because our help desk did not have the reporting capabilities we couldn't even extract the tickets. I had to manually copy and paste the URL in there and do it. But it changed everything for me.
Mhm.
I was then an authority. I knew what was happening in my queue. I knew what was happening in the business. I knew where documentation could be improved. I saw sales opportunities. I saw churn risks because of how often they were coming in. I was able to spot trends. And with support, one of the biggest things that we all feel after it's too late is you don't know what you don't know until it's too late. And when people would be onboarded onto my team, they would look at me like I was a crazy person when I would show them all the different things that I was tracking. But it's like, you don't know when this is going to be so valuable. And you need to be able to say, yeah, yeah, I've got all the data on that. I've been trying to tell you guys this for the last 6 months. I'm sorry that it hit you right now so hard, but let me give you a link to the spreadsheet that gives you the exact information that you need to start making this improvement. Because you're right, Kevin. This is the voice of the customer. You are not asking people a hypothetical situation like when they're enjoying their cup of coffee in the morning, when you are not on their brain whatsoever. You are hitting people when they're pissed off, usually, and listening to them and asking thoughtful questions and trying to learn from them so that they can be a collaborator with you to make the product better. And I know that when I feel like I'm valuable enough to a company that they care to listen to me and they want to implement things or are curious about it, that not only makes me want to stay for a super long time, but I want to tell every single other person I know about that service because this is a product that cares about me and my situation. And that's very, very rare right now. Scott, what about over at Help Scout? Like, what are you guys thinking about in terms of what's going to be coming up next, but more importantly, how can you empower support teams to be confident when they're bringing these things to places that usually don't have the space to listen to them?
Yeah, we have a we have kind of an advantage now with unlimited seats. So we don't charge for the number of people who have access to Help Scout. And it's very related to what Kevin was talking about with voice of the customer. We want to enable whole companies to get closer to the voice of the customer. And we just kept talking to support leaders saying, well, my CEO doesn't ever log in to the queue, or I want to send somebody a link to a conversation, but they can't add a note or they can't reply, or, well, we'd have to pay more for that. And we don't want to do that every month. We don't want to manage the cost. So that's part of why we're trying to figure out how to make it work where everybody at your company can have a login. It's very related to voice of the customer. So that's what I would encourage people, even if you're not using Help Scout, try to get the product leader, the PMs, the C-suite, try to get them closer to the voice of the customer into the tool. I think even if you have to pay for those seats, it's worth it. And then when you combine it with stuff like Kevin was talking about, where AI can help synthesize and pull out insights and do the painful work, Sarah, that you talked about doing manually, that's a great use of AI. Like, nobody wants to figure out root cause analysis. We want to figure out how to fix the root problems. So yeah, I'll get off my unlimited seats soapbox, but I'm really excited and we're kind of in the middle of this transition at Help Scout. I'm really excited as a product leader for how that can get the CX leader to have more of a voice inside the company, because they can just invite everybody in.
Yeah, and I'd love to add to that around just this concept of, like like a great use case and how AI can really help, just speed up this process. When you're looking at reporting, historically, you kind of need to know all of the drop downs and filters and every piece of information to try to make meaning. Maybe if you're lucky, you get a report that's hopefully pretty self-explanatory, but we're really moving towards a world where you can just, go into an interface and ask very natural questions and say, like, what's going on with my customers, and ask it in the way that makes sense to you, ask it differently depending on kind of the circumstances, and really like marry that data with the broader data around that customer to make meaning much more quickly. So I think there's like so much opportunity for CX leaders to just be more and more strategic using the capabilities that we're able to bring with AI as a tool. I think it's super exciting.
Totally. No, I think that that's such a really good call out, Rachel. The ability to kind of take that guesswork out of the experience. Like, we have to learn so many different languages of different departments, and nobody teaches us how to talk to finance. Nobody teaches us how to talk to product. No one teaches us how to talk to all these places. And yet none of those places talk support. We just always have to come to them. And to take that piece of brain space out of the mix so that you're able to empower the support leaders to just say, what do I need to pay attention to right now? What has shifted in conversations in the last 2 weeks? Then they're able to bring that data without emotion, without anything extra, just the data, to those meetings and tell the story that doesn't need to be in different languages, because data is universal, and that is the best way to get those messages across. And Rachel, I'm going to bug you again with another question here, because I'm super curious for all three of you, but I'm going to start with you, Rachel. Like, working so closely with support teams, listening to them, talking to them all the time, what's been something that really surprised you about how support teams use customer.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just, some of what I was talking about before in terms of just the wide variety of use cases, the very disparate ways that they're using our tool, which I think is really exciting. I mean, in so many ways, uh, we're just at the center of such key interactions where, we have the attention of customers, and they, that attention is such a rare commodity in this world that, I think that being able to take automations and take a more proactive approach through the tool, it's just been really cool to see folks using just very different approaches and using the exact same tool, which can be challenging as a product leader, because then you have a lot of different approaches that folks are using your tool for, that you have to like design for. I think that's the fun of our job, honestly. It's great to hear and listen. Sometimes you'll just not even realize that your tool is being used in a certain way, and that expands kind of the way that you need to think about designing and improving it.
That's the power of listening too, and the fact that you remember those interactions and you think about those interactions. It says a lot about how the company evolves with the customer. I think we all have seen, especially with the rise of AI, a lot of companies with great intention. And also, I'll scrap the AI piece. I've seen this way before AI, where they stop paying attention, and product leaders have a really cool idea of something that they want to try out. But the reality is, that does not make sense anymore. It maybe would have made sense 3 years ago when you first wanted to try it, but then you kept not having the capacity to get to it. And now finally you have a window, but it doesn't make sense anymore. And so, as support leaders, so often we are just like screaming, these are the things that really need to be looked at and considered and at least discussed with us in the room. And instead you see, well, actually our roadmap says this is what we're going to do. It's probably going to impact you in these ways, but you know, we'll get to your stuff eventually. It's my time to finally do this thing I'm really, really excited about. And so to hear that you are listening, you are acknowledging that everybody uses your product differently, and you're celebrating it. Because another thing we see is folks getting so laser focused on these like customer profiles or whatever it is that they're called. You've got like Fiona Finance or something like that. And it's like, does not represent a real person. And just because you don't act like Fiona in finance doesn't mean you are not worthy of using this service, and are not worthy of us listening to you and being curious about you. And with different things emerging and there being so many other options, you have to recognize that there's going to be so many edge cases that we're going to get to a point where an edge case isn't an edge case. It's just a customer. And what is their one goal? What do they really want to do here? And how can you help them get there in ways that gives them the freedom to expand when they need to expand, or just use it exactly how it was designed. But it's not going to break, and they're not going to be like get someone that's super annoyed to talk to them when they write into support because they didn't use it the way that it states you have to use it in the doc. And that gives a lot of power to support leaders when that is part of the core of your business, to listen to a customer for who they are and meet them where they are. Kevin, what about you over at Front? What has been one of those things where you're working closely with Kenji, but you're also talking to all of the other customers and you understand the value of the voice of the customer? Like, what surprised you with what support teams are doing with Front?
Yeah, so I think the thing that's been most surprising for me is that the definition of support and actually what the customer-facing teams do with Front is so varied. Sometimes it looks more like customer success. Sometimes it looks like scale customer success, and they may have a separate support team. Sometimes it's sales, right? And sometimes it's like customer operations. Like you have these logistics companies that are basically like choosing what shipments to bid on and how much to bid on, like inside a front. And so like you have all these complex workflows that are happening, and yeah, the challenge, and Rachel alluded to this, is like trying to figure out what are the set of problems that we are going to solve today for the customers, right? Without necessarily, disrupting the workflows for everyone else. And I think that's an ongoing challenge. It actually gets worse when it comes to AI, because AI has to make a bunch of assumptions about who you are as a persona. And so, for example, we had built this. I think Scott said their version was called AI Answers. Ours was called Copilot, where we suggest responses based on similar conversations and knowledge articles. And we have this customer that has a workflow where they just email themselves. And this is very confusing for the AI, right? Like it can't follow because they're trying to generate quotes or something, but like they just have this workflow, and so we have to like find these situations and handle them. And so that I think that's our attitude here is we will just measure some sort of core metric of how often are customers successfully using these features, and then we will use that as a North Star, right? And if there's something broken about it that makes it so they don't use it, then like it's up to us to kind of change, because otherwise it's not really helpful for them, right? And so we have run into that situation a bunch of times where we actually have to um, like change our features so that they adapt to the customer use case, vice versa, as opposed to asking them to accommodate us.
It's interesting because we
That's really
take a
cool.
very different approach, but I think just the wide scope of how you can approach these problems. There's pros and cons on both sides. So with our AI, we basically created AI agent teams where you're really giving each kind of member of your team very specific instructions to give them exactly how they should be performing within this AI agent team as kind of complementary to your human team, which I think it was really interesting to start to help folks understand it that way and help to just craft almost like a job description for your AI within your product. That is a lot of flexibility though, so it's a really like the two sides of this are giving folks a lot of flexibility means just more it takes more time to really ramp up, really understand how to use the tool and think through like what are the right use cases versus obviously from the design perspective being giving more guidance. I think this is a really interesting challenge with AI and where we are.
Yeah, I totally see that. Scott, something with Help Scout that I do love is, I mean, I have a very special place in my heart for Matt, who runs all of your content.
Yes.
And he is an angel human being, a hilarious one who commits to a bit in ways that I don't know any normal human would ever. I won't get into it too much, but there was a conference where he made a fake company and went so far as to make t-shirt company logo badge of like a physical badge of it so that he could really take it over the finish line. It was chef's kiss. But that type of personality being the face of the stories that you want to tell with Help Scout says a lot about the values that exist within Help Scout. And it would be a missed opportunity for me to not acknowledge that these companies, your companies, hold the power of the narrative of the value that exists within CX for the future. What companies should care about, how they should listen, different ways they should listen, different metrics that matter, different ways that AI is important and not important, places where there's you should integrate new tools instead of building it in-house. Like, you are telling the story in a very noisy space with people that should not be telling the story most of the time. But people look to you, CEOs look to you, different investors look to you to say, what does good look like? What actually matters? What's important here? And I love all three of your companies. I mean, Sam with you, Rachel, is such a force for representing what good looks like. Kenji, Kevin is one of my favorite people, and I could talk to him for days. And Matt, I do sometimes talk to for days, even though it's his midnight. And but they're all good people, and you celebrate these good people because you understand the power that you hold and you take it seriously. And by putting some lightness into some of the things, that also makes it a serious thing because you show that we're human, and that we aren't just going to be replaced. We do show value, and we should laugh about the ridiculousness that exists in our queue. And because you have that power, of course, you have to be thinking about the future and planting seeds for the future, because it's not like you can just unveil, you know, Help Scout Customer 17.5 and have it be a completely new product on a whim. I mean, I'm sure you could, but that would take a lot of planning, and I hope you would have a big reveal party. But right now, thinking August of 2025, everything's changed so fast and is constantly changing. The narratives are changing. What do you think that a help desk is going to look like in 5 years? And what do you hope you don't lose focus of in the process?
I think, I mean, I can't not think about AI and the impact it'll have. I think, and by the way, I wanted to apologize on behalf of all the product leaders here about your past traumas, Sarah, trying to convince us to listen to you.
It's okay. You guys are a safe space. We're good. We're
okay.
good.
Yeah. We're listening. But I think if you talk to any CX leader, Abigail is our CX leader at Help Scout. When I talk to anybody on our support team, I think they all have stories of parts of the job that they'd rather not do. Sarah, you talked about your root cause analysis, but there's lots of other aspects. And I'm going to also include, like, we work with a lot of new customers where we're their first help desk. So one of our most popular sort of like, what was your last solution, was like Gmail, Outlook, like nothing. And I don't know if it's the same at front and customer, but I just think it speaks to, like, it's kind of reminds me of when Netflix said that some journalist asked them, who's your biggest competitor or who do you talk about? And they said sleep. It's like, nah, it wasn't another streaming service. So I say that because a lot of people who come in to set up a help desk for the first time who aren't veterans, but they have these problems like Kevin talked about when he was a founder, they don't know how to use the tools. And it doesn't matter how simple or easy we make them to set up. They're just there's a lot of nuance. Like, you have to understand, it's like a lot of cognitive load to understand what's possible with the software. And so a lot of people I talk to just don't even know what's there. Like, we've built a product to do something or solve a problem for them, and they don't even know it exists. We're obviously working on making that easier to understand and set up. But I think one part of AI that we don't talk a lot about, that I'm excited about as a product person, is helping people kind of like set up or discover capabilities of the software in a really like helpful way. As though you, Sarah, if you were going to set up, well, you probably wouldn't hire somebody, but you're a new startup founder or CX leader, you might like hire a consultant or talk to a friend about, like, what should I set up? How should I do it? I feel like AI is going to start to take more of a hands-on approach, I guess, in like helping people get set up faster to see value. So I'm excited about that. We have a ways to go there, but I don't know if it's natural language, like, hey, here's my problem, like set up something. And it's like, okay, I set up a topic, I set up this, a workflow, this. I'm excited about that future. I think that's where we're headed, where it's more about focusing on customers rather than like how to set up software. Salesforce, you're in
I
trouble.
love that. I love that. I absolutely love that because you're right. What you do, the services that you provide, A lot of the time it's before there is a support team. It is a founder that hit a point where they're like, I got to do something. And then you are showing them the value that exists within these spaces and how serious they need to be taking these CX and how celebrated these CX teams need to be. And you're walking them through, like, these are your foundations. This is how you succeed. If you want to do this well, you have to do this. And that means, and I love, Scott, with what help desk is doing for the seat bit, because that may end up having a ripple effect where CX leaders are hired earlier because there's not that risk of those additional seats. I mean, CX leaders are usually hired last when it comes to those foundational roles within a starting of a company. And so to take that hurdle away is really cool. It's really special. And you need to have someone that knows what they're doing earlier than a lot of companies bring them in.
Yeah.
And so you're telling that story through the ways that you're approaching your plan setups. It's really cool. Kevin, with AI being your main focus and seeing how it's exploded in good ways and in bad ways within the CX space, in 5 years, what do you think is going to happen?
So one thing that I think is most interesting about what AI can do is consolidate all the knowledge about a business in one source of truth, right? So today, people do this by writing knowledge articles, and as companies get bigger, they actually have dedicated teams that focus on that. But you're actually also having these conversations with your customers, imparting knowledge or writing down knowledge all the time, right? And as you're like, for a support agent to deal with like a complex question, they may be going to product and engineering, asking all these questions and getting all this knowledge that's like pretty expensive to get, and it's just buried inside an email. And then the next time it's asked, like if it wasn't codified, it's like someone has to do it again. And so I think in 5 years that will stop happening, right? The help desk will actually become the source of knowledge. They will be reading all these conversations, and of course, the knowledge articles will probably be updating the knowledge articles like in real time, right? And then also, but this is not saying that human expertise and empathy isn't important anymore. Actually, what will have to happen is that when there are changes, right? When agent is saying something that's different than what has happened in the past, that needs to be escalated. And it's like, okay, well, there's something is happening here. Maybe there's a change, and you actually need expertise to then go and look at that and verify. All right, well, this is the authoritative source. This has changed, right? And so I think that workflow changes quite a lot. I alluded to this earlier, but I think there's going to be way more support ops folks, people who are building like on top of these help desk systems or whatever we call them in the future. Um, and and like I don't certainly I think there's going to be fewer like front end like tier one support agents that are answering rote questions, but I think there's actually going to be more higher paid, higher skilled support professional jobs in the future that look more like technical project management, right, or program management, something like that. And yeah, so that's kind of what I see happening, both in terms of what help desk will do or become, and also what like the industry, right, the professionals will become.
Oh, that's so much to think about too. Uh, there's just so much that could change in a really short period of time. I mean, we see it every day. What about over at Customer, Rachel? Like, what are you thinking about for building for the future, planting those seeds, and trying to be ahead of the curve, but also stay focused on the now?
Yeah. I mean, plus one to everything Scott and Kevin have said. What I would add is really, I do think there are a lot of ways in which we have, with knowledge, there's some easy use cases for AI, but as we get into some of the more complex use cases, I think the importance of the the platform data, and having that customer data really married well with your CX kind of workflows is going to be really critical. I think about this quite a lot, and this is, part of, the when Brad and Jeremy started Kustomer 10 years ago, this was really kind of a core piece of the way they thought about building this platform, a CRM with CX. Um, the piece that I think is going to really change is the way that we experience that. When you think about 10 years ago when Brad and Jeremy started Kustomer, it was really almost revolutionary in a lot of ways to imagine you had 100 pieces of data for a customer, all of their orders, everything just sitting in one screen in one place. And the reality is with AI, you don't need to see 100 pieces of data on one screen. There's really a lot you can do to simplify, to make, the job of a rep is already so incredibly stressful, like, to be able to make it just simpler for them to get the context they need at the right time, taking into account that, holistic data. I think it's going to be really exciting to be able to bring down some of that stress, and make it a little bit easier for reps to really have a partner with their AI that can help them be more proactive with their customers.
My gosh, I could talk to you about that, Rachel, for like 3 hours, and we're running out of time, and it's making me so sad. So I've got so many more things I want to talk to you guys about. But that right there, I think, is it. It is. I used to have a due diligence list that I would give to the team, and it would be all of these random places where you would have to check before you could even start thinking about solving the problem, like working with DNS and not checking to see if a name server was connected to our platform. That meant that you were going to give bad information to the customer. And then you've already broken that trust in that split second. And why did you feel like you were unable to go through all of this stuff to figure out how you were going to approach it? And figuring out how you can take all of the different places that important information lives and present it in a way that's digestible, that moves things forward. I mean, even thinking about like, okay, so this one person from a company is writing about this, but last week somebody from their UK team wrote in about something similar. It's not the same email address, but that is important information to know, even if it's not totally connected. And the CSM needs to know about that so that when they're having those conversations, and sometimes people in support are getting answers from folks that the CSMs have been trying to get to answer their emails about a renewal for like 3 months, but none of that information. You may have things that you can go to find it, but it's hard get the time and get into the habit of clicking in all these places. So thinking of how can we present this in a way that is digestible? And then also we have to acknowledge people absorb information differently. So what works for you, what works for me, what works for Scott, works for Kevin, may not work for the next person that you hire. And that doesn't mean that they're incapable of doing their job well. It just means people learn differently and they need different things. You guys have a really hard job. I do have one rapid fire question to end things. If a new support leader came in to your company and they really, really wanted to build a strong relationship with product from day one and be considered an authority and equal with product from day one, what is the first thing that they should ask a product leader when they're doing that intro meeting? I'm going to start with you, Rachel.
Oh boy. I think it's a lot around the why, right? I mean, we're all our roadmaps, we all have plans, we all are working on, so much, but, really digging into the why. What is driving the decisions you're making? Like, what are the real conversations that you had? What are the insights that are leading to, how you're changing your product? I think those like why conversations are always incredibly impactful.
And I think I'm going to try that because that is a really good way to just be curious, and that's respectful and kind. And I love that approach. Kevin, what about you?
So related to that, I would really for the CX leader, the new CX leader to be credible, they have to demonstrate that they understand the customers really well, right? Like that is not. I don't have that much respect for CX leaders that are just like, oh, I like do the workforce management and like I do the demand load and then look at the dashboards. Like at the end of the day, if they're not like spend enough time in the trenches, like actually understanding the customers, then I feel like it's going to be hard, to Rachel's point, to come back with like, this is what's important and why, right? Yeah, so I mean, the same thing I think for product. Like we need to spend a lot of time with the customers as well. But like certainly a CX leader needs to do the same.
Oh, Kevin, I wish we had more time to dig into that because I have some thoughts and they are not in agreement with what you said. But that's okay. Maybe we'll have an email chain and that also will be turned into a doc. No, I think that understanding what you're talking about is 1000% important. Having the authority to be able to speak about the experience in a way that has depth is very, very important. I think that the tools that you guys create could allow that to happen much more easily for someone where, I mean, just quick caveat, for the last 3 companies that I've worked for and led teams, I have not known a single thing about what we do when we join. And also sometimes down the road, I still have no idea what we do. Don't ask me too many questions about DNS. I was a VP there for 5 years. I still barely know anything, but I know what good looks like. And I know what a person needs to feel heard. And I know how to bring the right people in to fill in the gaps. And I'm the first person to say I don't know something, but I was still doing the root cause analysis on all those things, even though I had no clue what the heck they were talking about. I was still able to pinpoint those bits and pieces so that I could be an authority, even if I didn't know how to replicate it
I think
myself. They're
there
very,
is
very skilled.
there's a negative correlation between how confident someone says they are about how well they know something and then how well they actually know it. So I suspect, based on the way you're talking about it, you actually knew what you were talking about at some level.
Didn't. I really didn't. I did make a video talking about what a name server is as an excuse for me to figure out what the heck a name server was. And it ended up getting like 40,000 views. So I am not alone in not knowing what the heck a name server is, but it kind of stopped there. That's the last video that I made. Okay, we really are running out of time. Scott, this does not mean that you cannot give me a full answer to this question. Rapid fire. What is the one question that you would tell a CX leader to ask a product leader to build those relationships?
I think it's, we have a principle at Help Scout internally that is called happy to help. And when I think about the CX leaders, including Abigail at Help Scout, about why it's been a successful relationship between product and them, I think it's because we're aligned about what we're trying to impact. And especially if you're a leader, you have to be thinking about the business impact, not just operations or your team or whatever smaller scope you have. And I think, I'm sure Rachel and Kevin feel this too. Like, we feel responsible for making the parts or the whole business really successful. And I don't think, like I've told Nick, you can't consider me a successful product leader unless, we're making more money or being sustainable as a business. And so I think, like, if you're a CX leader that shows an interest in, hey, like, what do we need to partner on and work on together to impact the business in that way? All the other stuff is kind of like a means to an end. I think you'll get the ear of the product leader will be like, okay, this is like a business leader that I can partner with to enact change.
I love that. I think these are all so helpful. Thank you again, all 3 of you, for being brave enough to face a stranger and to hang out with me for almost longer than what I promised you I would keep you for. But really, this has been such a pleasure. I wish I got to hang out with you guys all the time because I truly have so many questions that aren't even on our piece of paper.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Sarah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.